Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ رِجَالٌ صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِ. Amongst the believers are men who have been truthful to the covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم لك الحمد بالإسلام ولك الحمد بالإيمان ولك الحمد بالقرآن وجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا for attending this session again. I want to remind myself first and foremost, one of the objectives of us sitting here, among many of the multiple intentions that we should have, amongst them one of them we should have tonight, right now, is a statement of the Salaf. They used to say, عند الذكر الصالحين تنزل الرحمة. Upon the remembrance of the righteous, the mercy of Allah descends. So what we want, what we thrive for tonight, right now, is to seek Allah's rahmah through this, inshallah. And you will see there is a link to what I'm saying now, right at the end of the session, inshallah, bidnillah. So tonight we will be covering a Sahabi who will overcome and surpass all other Sahaba we have spoken so far. We did disagree not to speak about the Al-Asharatul Mubashirin, but I think it's quite relevant. So we will be covering a powerhouse, a mighty figure, and whose legend is repeatedly spoken about till this very day. And as we know, he is one of the Al-Asharatul Mubashirin, meaning he is from the 10 blessed companions who were given glad tidings while they were alive by the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself. So these 10 are the best of the Sahaba. In fact, they were the greatest human beings after the Anbiya. So that's their ranking. So the names, as we know, from the four Khulafa al-Rashidin, first Abu Bakr, then Umar, Uthman, Ali, and then the other 6. And Abu Ubaydah is one of them. Abu Ubaydah ibn Al Jarraah, Talha ibn Ubaydillah, Zubair ibn Al-Awwam, Sa'd ibn Abu Waqqas, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, and Sa'id ibn Zayd. These guys were the greatest human beings on the face of the earth after the Anbiya. So it needs to be memorized. Youngsters, you need to know these names. Yeah, you need to write it down and get your parents to tell you these stories over and over again. I've read the story over and over again. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But indeed, I am the most fortunate one here because I had to read and write and take time. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from me and forgive us our shortcomings. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Like I said, he was an extremely high-ranking Sahabi in the sight of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the companions. However, his elevated status never made himself speak about himself because he was extremely modest, and you will find this. Even though he was amongst the most modest companions, he was one who was used by the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam many times to lead expeditions. So he was a commander of the armies of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he sent them out. And under the Khalif Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, they conquered many lands. Bilad al-Sham. Today Bilad al-Sham is, as you know, cut up in pieces. Allahumma barik lana fi Shamina wa fi Yemen, Ameen Rabbil Alameen. This is the dua of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He made dua for Bilad al-Sham. So he was one of the men from the Ummah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who opened up Bilad al-Sham. Jerusalem was conquered. We'll cover this a little bit, very briefly afterwards. And Masjid al-Aqsa came into the hands of the Muslims for the first time after Sulaiman alayhi salam. Allah Akbar.
When you say Sham, is that Syria and Iraq?
Very good, actually. So for the benefit of everyone, Bilad al-Sham is Syria, all of Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine, but also Sinai Peninsula is part of Bilad al-Sham. That's the far eastern part of Egypt, and parts of Turkey, parts of Saudi Arabia, currently Saudi Arabia, parts of Iraq as well. All of that is Bilad al-Sham. And there is, as we know, many narrations regarding this. We have covered this in our seerah session, so we don't have to cover this now, inshallah. So even though the Muslims at the time of Abu Ubaidah, when he was the commander of the Muslim army, they gained a lot of spoils. Vast lands came into their land. If you can imagine, if you're now winning and taking over countries and lands, then most certainly you are taking over many spoils, whether it's animals or houses and treasures. That's all in your hands. This did not change their character. Subhanallah, you will see. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu suggested, after the death of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Muslims were talking about a potential Khalifa amongst the Ansar, Sa'ad ibn Ubaydah was one of those names that was popped up, one of the great Sahabi from the Ansar. But when Umar ibn Khattab heard this, he ran towards the Ansar and he presented Abu Ubaidah and Abu Bakr and said, one of these men have to be leading the Ummah. Subhanallah. So this shows his virtue and merit. Let's go to his acceptance of Islam. He was around 18 to 19 years old when he accepted Islam. Another young Sahabi, subhanallah. 18 to 19. Anyone here near that age? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Anyone 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21? How old are you? 16. So here's the closest one. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So many of the Sahaba, we find many of the Sahaba were young. They started very early. So he was not an exception. In fact, he was one who had memorized the Quran. Their love of Rasulullah and acceptance of Islam made them love the Quran, which made them memorize the Quran. Memorize the Quran, brothers. Even the small portion regularly. Keep memorizing the Quran. And we spoke about Abdullah ibn Masud, and we spoke about Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah, as you know, he became a Muslim quite late. He missed Badr, Uhud for various reasons. Abdullah ibn Masud, one of those fortunate companions, handful of companions whom the Prophet whom Allah chose them to participate in all the battles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A handful of companions. Abu Ubaidah was one of them. Ibn Al Jarraah. All the battles, 18 to 19 battles, they participated. And on top of that, he did Habash, the migration to Abyssinia. And on top of that, they were there at Hudaybiyah. And on top of that, they were the Bayat al-Aqaba. Sorry, not Bayat al-Aqaba. The Bayat al-Aqaba predominantly were the Ansari Sahaba. Yeah? So his CV was full. How is our CV looking, brothers? I'm not talking about A-levels and things like this. I'm talking about, things that will bring us to, for the angels to, compete. This is the guy. Like Sa'ad ibn Mu'adh, remember? When he passed away, the angels were so happy, so joyous, they shook. They were holding on to the throne of Allah. It shook because they were so happy a pious soul is coming to the heavens, subhanAllah. Will the angels be happy to see us when we leave this world? The angels in the heavens. These are questions, serious questions we need to ask ourselves. Anyway, we will find some of this we will cover inshallah. His family and his nobility. Okay. Abu Ubaidah, that's not his real name. Who knows his real name? Anyone? Anyone? His real name was Amir. Amir ibn Abdullah ibn Al Jarraah. Amir, the son of Abdullah, the son of Al Jarraah, better known as Abu Ubaidah, his kunya. There was another Sahabi who had shared the same name, or Ubaidah, not Abu Ubaidah, Ubaidah. His full name was Ubaydah ibn Al Harith ibn Al Muttalib. So you can guess he was the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, and his father, Ubaydah ibn Al Harith, so Ubaidah's father Harith, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's father Abdullah, they were brothers. And their father was Abdul Muttalib. So Ubaidah, just very briefly, to separate him from Abu Ubaidah, Ubaydah was that Sahabi at Badr whom the Prophet said, stand up Ubaydah, stand up Hamza, stand up Ali. And they fought that one-on-one Jew. Yeah, and Ubaydah got stabbed. And he was one of those 12 who were martyred. They were one of those 12 who were martyred in Badr. So these 12 names, brothers should know these names. Let me ask you, brothers, to keep you engaged. Who are the other? Can you name any of the other 12 who were martyred in Badr? Everyone knows Badr, right? 313 men who participated. 12 were martyred. So one mentioned, I just mentioned, Ubaydah ibn Harith. Hamza was at Uhud. Anyone? Whose name is Uhud? I'll make it easy for you. Yeah. My youngest son, what's his name? Youngest one. Umayr. Yeah. There's two Sahabi, 16 years old, Umayr ibn Hammam and Umayr ibn Abu Waqqas, the younger brother of Sa'd ibn Abu Waqqas. They were both 16 years old and they were both martyrs at Badr. Allahu Akbar. So you can remember this, inshallah. Yeah. There were others. Look it up. You need to know these names. Inshallah. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, the son of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he used to say there were three who were the most prominent amongst the Quraysh. They had the best character and they were the most modest. They were the most shy. And if they spoke to you, they would not deceive you. And if you spoke to them, they would not accuse you of lying. So can you imagine what sort of people they are? And then he mentioned these names: Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Abu Ubaydah ibn Al Jarraah radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu once sitting in a gathering like this, and he said to his people, Tamannaw, young man, wish for something right now. I'll give you 3 seconds to wish, make a dua to Allah right now. 3, 2, 1, come on. Another person. 3, 2, 1, wish for something quickly. Did you see the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Anyone else?
I wish to go to Jannah.
Allah Akbar, he wants to go Jannah. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Anyone else? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Yes. So, Umar bin Khattab asked the gathering like this, Tamannaw. One of them said, I wish this room was full of weapons so I can use it fi sabilillah. Another one, and then again he said, Tamannaw, and the other person said, I wish this room was full of jewels and treasures so I can spend it in faqh fi sabilillah. Jewels, yeah? Jewels, yeah? And then he asked again, Tamannaw, and they said, we don't know what else to ask for. So think about this as well. The Sahaba, when they were asked, wish, they were thinking of using something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the deen. So they didn't have any other ideas after weapons and jewels. They didn't know what to say. They said, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, Anta tamannaw, you wish. Then he made those famous statements, Atamanna bil hadha al-fursan ka Abu Ubaydah. I wish this room was full of horsemen, meaning warriors like Abu Ubaydah, so I can send him fi sabilillah. Subhanallah. Imagine hundreds of Abu Ubaydah in a room, going out to the world. What would happen? The whole world would be Muslims. The whole world would be Muslims. Subhanallah. His appearance, it's mentioned that his appearance was striking. He was slim, but tall, and strong and powerful. His face was bright and he had a sparse beard. He didn't have full beard, he had a sparse beard. And it was pleasing to look at him and refreshing to meet him. And when I was reading this again and again, the hadith comes in mind. The best amongst you are those when you see them, they remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you have that appearance, or when you look at yourself in the mirror and you don't see Allah, or you don't remember Allah, or you don't make dua to Allah, then feel bad, brothers. And when you see, and when you're around brothers, and you don't remind them about Allah for one single moment, then that gathering, as we know, is like you're sitting around a carcass and then you're walking away afterwards. Make that gathering blessed. Make that any gathering where Allah is not mentioned is a wretched and cursed gathering. Subhanallah. So be that person. When you see no one's talking about Allah, you put Allah in that gathering, inshallah. Abu Ubaidah was a skilled, highly skilled warrior. He was extremely brave and courageous, yet he was very shy and humble, subhanallah. Just like the Prophet ﷺ. Immensely strong, very brave when the time needed them to be brave, but yet when they were, with their family, their people, they were so shy. They were very bashful. Al-haya'u la yati illa bi khair. And shyness does not bring about anything but goodness. So to be shy is very good. What's the opposite of being shy? Youngsters. What's the opposite of being shy? MashaAllah, I said youngsters, bro. Sorry. Yeah, alhamdulillah, yeah, proud. MashaAllah, okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so it's true. It's true though, alhamdulillah. So the opposite of being shy is being proudful. Meaning you're arrogant, you're looking down on someone else. As if I'm the one with the knowledge, I'm the one with the car, I'm the one with the phone, I'm the one with the clothes. Me. And you're looking down on someone else. That's being proud. That's not allowed. That's haram. So Abu Ubaidah was an immensely skilled warrior, shy, but when the time came for fighting, and we will see this, he was amongst the best. His life in Mecca, just like the early converts, I forgot to mention this, he was one of the earliest Muslims. One day after Abu Bakr, he became Muslim. In fact, Abu Bakr is the one who gave him da'wah. Can you imagine the rewards of Abu Bakr? Because he's the one who gave da'wah to Abu Ubaidah, Zubayr, and a few others. Can you imagine? So likewise, we need to also go and find the next Abu Ubaidah, the next Uthman and Umar. And then whatever good deeds they perform, you and I will share the reward, inshallah. That's the smart move. So, as I said, he endured the difficulties in the early days of Mecca, like the other Sahaba. He went to Abyssinia. And I'm going to fast forward to Battle of Badr. Yeah? Battle of Badr was one of the most harrowing experiences he had to go through. He was at the vanguard of the Muslim forces, and whilst fighting with might and strength, not afraid of death, he saw a man whom he did not want to fight. And at the same time, all the Quraysh were very wary of him. They didn't want to fight him. So it was just one man he did not want to fight. And that man came head to head with him. And those of us who know the story, it was indeed his father, who was a mushrik, Abdullah ibn Al Jarraah, his father. And then he had no choice because he's now blocking his path. They fought and he killed his father. As soon as he done that, the people saw this. They said, قَتَلَ أَبُوهُ Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah has killed his father. And he was very convincingly saying, مَا قَتَلْتُهُ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ قَتَلَ. I did not kill him, Allah killed him. Just like the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he, remember in Badr, he threw that dust, the sand. Yeah, and then وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. When he threw, Allah says, when you threw, it was not you who threw, but it was Allah who threw. Attributing it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very important lesson here. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. And this was after Battle of Badr. After the victory of Badr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches the Muslims, وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. There is no help except from Allah. Meaning you did not gain the victory, Allah gave you the victory. See the difference? Because if you think that you are the one who gained the victory, you got the victory, then pride and arrogance, me, I was the one who won the battle. I fought and I won. Me. And even today's day and age, we need to be careful. When we go to colleges or when we get good jobs, you need to attribute that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be humble, attribute that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the characteristics of the Sahaba. Abu Ubaidah, you will find him done this a few times. And after this incident, Battle of Badr, Allah revealed the last verse of Surah Al-Mujadilah. Anyone who hafiz here? Anyone memorized the whole Quran? Okay. We need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from the people of the Quran. Every time I sit here, I say, Allahumma ja'alna min ahli Quran, Allah make us from the people of the Quran. Brothers, we need to at least target halfway before we die. Halfway, inshallah. The youngsters, you have more of an opportunity, and the fathers, push them. Yeah? So last verse of Surah Mujadila. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يودون من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كانوا آباءهم وأبناءهم وإخوانهم وعشيرتهم أولئك كتب في قلوبهم الإيمان وزيدهم بروح منه ويدخلهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه أولئك حزب الله ألا إن حزب الله هم المفلحون. Allah says, never ever will find a group of people who believe in Allah and the last day having any affection towards those who oppose Allah and His Messenger, even if they were their fathers, their sons, their brothers, their kindred. And Allah has written Iman in their hearts and strengthened them with His Spirit, subhanAllah. And then He will admit them into gardens underneath which rivers flow to abide therein forever. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. And Allah is well pleased with them and they are well pleased with Allah. أُولَٰئِكَ حِزْبُ اللَّهِ. They are the truly labeled as Hizbullah, the party of Allah. Allah inna Hizbullah hum muflihun. Isn't the party of Allah the most successful? Now, question to keep you guys engaged. We have families who are Muslims, so we can't really act upon this verse literally speaking, but there is other ways we can apply this verse in our life. How can we apply? I'm going to read out the first part of the verse so you'll understand the question again. Never will you find a group of people who believe in Allah on the last day having any affection to those who oppose Allah and His Messenger, even if they were their fathers, their sons, their brothers, their kindred. So, how can we apply this verse in our life? If our families are Muslim, surely there are other things out there that will make us challenge the choices that we make. Friends, excellent. If friends are opposing Allah and His Messenger, even if they were Muslims, you cut that friendship off at that time, for that action, for that speech. Doesn't mean you completely cut the person off, even physically. I'm talking about that action or that speech from a friend who is clearly opposing Allah and His Messenger. I.e., he's telling you, dragging towards haram, taking you to a place where Allah is not happy with. Excellent. What else? Even now, explain. So how will we oppose them? Okay. So family, or even colleagues. Yeah, okay, colleagues. What about if I make it a bit more specific and say, if you start thinking about views, opinions, can we apply this verse when it comes to our views and our opinions? Even family, actually, we can. Come on, bro. How can we do that?
Maybe family want to do something that goes against.
Excellent.
Like wedding.
Yes, excellent. So this is a common one. Your family want to have a haram wedding, mixed wedding, music, and you're saying you're adamant, no. It has to be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want the barakah. So you opposed your family at that time. لا طاعة المخلوق في معصية الخالق. The Prophet ﷺ gave a precedent. He left a principle for us. There is no obedience to the creation in the disobedience to the Creator. There is no obedience to the creation in the disobedience to the Creator. Okay? I'll move on, but before moving on, I'll add a few more. Even sins. You can make hijrah with the sins, but you can also hit sins. And even certain views are being posed upon us in schools. LGBT, or supporting certain ideologies, which is clearly wrong. The Zionist state of Israel, they have a legitimacy. They don't have a legitimacy. They are an occupier. They don't have a right to defend. But it's been imposed on everyone in schools to the extent that now they are the victims when they are clearly the aggressor. Okay? And there's a term for this in Islam, and it's called al-wala wal-bara, which means loyalty, friendship, yeah, to the extent that even if sometimes you have to give your life for that, then you do that. For Allah and His Messenger and the Deen and the believers. And the opposite is disloyalty and enmity to all those things. To those, those who oppose all those things. We find Ibrahim alayhi salam in Surah Mumtahina. He says clearly, there's now between you and me enmity. Okay, and this is part of our aqidah, its foundations. We have to have this in our iman. A Christian delegation came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Abul Qasim. Who's Abul Qasim? Youngsters, who's Abul Qasim? Yeah, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his nickname was Abul Qasim. Yeah, his other name was Ahmad, right? So these people, the Christians, they came and said, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Abul Qasim, send one from your companions with us to go back, whom you are very pleased with, and he can judge between us. And that's because we have a high regard for you Muslims. Subhanallah. Christians are coming to the Muslims to make a judge for them. Subhanallah. And we'll cover something on this topic a little later when we come to Jerusalem. And then he said, the Prophet said, I will send you a man who is most trustworthy, haqq amin. And he again mentioned amin. And in another narration he mentions qawil amin, which means strong and able, or strong and trustworthy. Now, after hearing this, the following day, if I'm not mistaken, why this happened at Fajr time, Umar ibn Khattab, he really badly wanted that position. He said, never ever I wanted a position as badly as this position. So he goes to the masjid, and you know he's a large man already. He's sitting at the front line and waiting for the Prophet to finish his prayers. So now the Prophet turned around looking for someone, and he's making himself, like this, so the Prophet can see him. Yes, Rasulullah, I'm here. As if he's trying to say that. But he glanced at him and moved left and right and said, Qum Abu Ubaidah. Oh, Abu Ubaidah, stand up. Subhanallah. And at that time, the famous narration, there was a merit was given to Abu Ubaidah. Likewise, we find different Sahabas were given various immensely admirable labels. So here he mentions, and this has to be mentioned, this is one of the greatest titles a Muslim can possess. He says, Inna li kulli ummatin aminan wa inna aminan ayyatuha al-ummah Abu Ubaydah ibn Al Jarraah radiyallahu anhu. Indeed, certainly, or verily, every nation has an extremely trustworthy man. And the most trustworthy man of this ummah is Abu Ubaydah ibn Al Jarraah radiyallahu anhu. Again, Amin is not just trustworthy, it also means very capable. And someone who's strong and he will complete his task. And on top of that, you will find he will have the best interest for the ummah. The Amin will have the best interest of the ummah. He will constantly remember the ummah. He will think about the ummah, and you will find this in Abu Ubaidah. And this was also a character of Musa alayhi salam. When he was mentioned in the Quran, when the two sisters went back to their father Shu'aib, they said, go, you should hire him. He's Qawil Amin. I'm looking at Shu'aib because we're Shu'aib there. Yeah, alhamdulillah. It's a clear lesson here, brothers. We need to work on our truthfulness and our honesty. And also to be of those who do ihsan and fulfill our amana. Complete our tasks and work on those. Keep working on it. Keep working on it. Keep trying. And have that concern for the ummah. Give in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do things for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Don't give up. Don't let 2 days go past when you haven't done something for the ummah. Do something. And remember, it is your flag. Everyone was actually flag bearers. Have you raised the flag today? If you haven't today, make sure you raise the flag high tomorrow, inshallah. Next battle. What was the second major battle? Battle of Uhud. Yes, the Battle of Uhud. Now, it's been mentioned that the Prophet had 2 or 3 really dark times. We covered some of it previously. Ta'if is one of them. The death of his beloved wife Khadija radiyallahu anha, and of course his uncle, even though he wasn't a Muslim, but it was in the same period. So that year was called the year of Hazan, or the year of sorrow. But there was another moment in Uhud, subhanallah, subhanallah. It was one of the darkest hours of the life in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. One of the darkest hours. Can you imagine the Prophet ﷺ? He's saying this was one of the most difficult times. In fact, it was his wife Aisha who was mentioning this, because he was bloodied from head to toe. Picture this, brothers. Our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all red in battlefield. We have loved the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Now, can you imagine what was going through the minds of the Sahaba? This was a very serious situation for them. Anyway, just at the end, near the end, there were 10 companions who surrounded and encircled the Prophet to protect him. Abu Ubaidah was one of them. And after the battle, one of the reasons why the Prophet's face was bleeding, because the helmet that he was wearing, dug into his face, and he was bleeding because of that. So Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu wanted to remove that and tend to his injuries. Abu Ubaidah stopped him. He said, "Let me, ya Abu Bakr." So he allowed him, and then because he did not want to cause any harm to the Rasul, the blessed face of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used his mouth and took out the chain with his teeth, and one of his front teeth fell. Subhanallah. But there was another chain, so he had to take the other one out with his other teeth, and that one also fell out. Subhanallah. And now he's looking at Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is looking at this guy. Two of his teeth has fallen in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he says, "Wallahi, this man is so beautiful. He still is beautiful." I'll tell you a miracle what happened afterwards. If you have lost your front teeth, you will have some impediment in your speech, because your tongue will come out a little bit, right? The miracle happened to Abu Ubaidah. His speech became even more beautiful after the tooth falling out. Subhanallah. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning, it was very pleasing to meet him. Very nice to hear from him. Subhanallah. And one of the major lessons here, what is the major lesson? What do you think? Love of Allah and His Messenger. This is something you will find throughout the seerah. The Sahaba, they loved the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam like no other. The mushrikeen and the enemies, the kuffar, when they used to come, they said they will follow this man to the sea. They will push away the mountain if they were commanded to do so. This was the Sahaba. This is one of the reasons why we're going through the men and around the Messenger, to develop this love of our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala nabiyyina Muhammad. An expedition was sent out by the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam with Abu Ubaidah as the head of the army. 300 men, and they were sent to the coast near the sea to watch out for a Qurayshi caravan. I believe they missed the caravan, but they were there for a month, and they were given rations, dates, and water. And they were having some dates a day until it became one date a day. Then it became date seeds only. And before that, they were slaughtering animals, and then eventually they stopped having animals slaughtered because the rations were, the animals they needed to ride back as well. So now when they were hungry, they started eating on leaves. Subhanallah. And through that pain of hunger and difficulty, and especially going to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you think Allah will leave you alone? Allah comes to the aid of these people. And at that time, a huge whale was on the seaside. At first they didn't want to go to it, but then Abu Ubaidah commanded, "This is risk from Allah, we should eat it." Because they were starving, literally starving. Having leaves, then they must be starving. They were eating and having pleasure in eating and enjoying, and now they're smiling and gaining weight and applying oil on their bodies and chilling on the eye socket. It was mentioned they were sitting, the close companions, they were sitting together on the eye socket of the whale, chilling. Abu Ubaidah commanded the tallest mujahid to ride the animal, and they had the ribs dug to the ground like this, and the tallest and soldier would go underneath the ribs without touching the ribs, subhanAllah, to show how huge it was. It was like a small mountain. Rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verse comes in mind, and this is quite important. When you go in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will obviously give us, aid us. But when you have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Allah says, whoever has fear of Allah, whoever has taqwa, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Allah will make a way out for him. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَحْتَسِبْ. And provide for him from sources that he could never have imagined. How many of us experienced this in a small, short life, where we thought that there is no more opening, but we kept on remembering Allah, we kept on making dua, we kept on not going towards the haram to get the means, and then eventually the aid came from sources that we couldn't have imagined, whether it's marriage, whether it's work, whether it's finances, difficulties in life. So what do? Build your levels of consciousness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will certainly make a way out for us. And when they returned to Medina, they related the story to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, yes, that was indeed rizq from Allah. If you have some for us, let us have it. It's actually shudki, dry fish. It's been a while, so they had shudki as a sunnah. Yeah, some of the people use this as evidence. Shudki is sunnah. Okay, so after the death of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu became the Khalifa, and Abu Bakr appointed Khalid ibn al-Walid radiyallahu anhu to be the leader of the Muslim army. Umar ibn Khattab came, and he now sent a letter to the armies in Bilad al-Sham, where Abu Ubaydah and Khalid and the rest of them were, to demote Khalid and appoint Abu Ubaidah as the commander of the Muslim army. And the reason behind it, very quickly, is because the people loved Khalid ibn Walid. He was winning every battle. He never lost a battle in his lifetime. The greatest military general ever in the history of mankind is Khalid ibn Walid, but only after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah. So Umar ibn Khattab wanted to preserve the iman of the believers, the soldiers, by not allowing them to think it is Khalid who is winning the battles. It was Allah. And Abu Ubaidah was also a very capable man. He was commander previously many times. But there was an amazing story that led to this. So let me read this out. This letter from Umar ibn Khattab, Abu Ubaidah did not hand over to Khalid because there was a battle taking place. So he held it, withheld it, and then he passed it on after the battle. And then Khalid read it after the battle, which obviously he was victorious, like I said, he never lost the battle. And then with this extreme politeness, Abu Ubaidah passes in the letter, and then Khalid reads and he says, "May Allah have mercy on you, Ya Abu Ubaidah. What made you keep this message from me?" The Aminul of this ummah, Abu Ubaidah radiyallahu anhu, says, "I was afraid lest it should cause any confusion that might affect the army's morale." So see, remember I mentioned the Amin, the trustworthy man, is the one who has concern for the ummah. And we do not crave for the splendor of this life or any positions, and we are only brothers. That's why he said. Can you imagine Khalid was really humbled by this? Really humbled by this. Because Abu Ubaidah was a high-ranking Sahabi, and his understanding is unlike many of us today who want positions. He did not want positions. He was given it. Sami'na wa ata'na, but he took it. So now Abu Ubaidah is the commander of the Muslim army. And at that time, and at that point, it was the mightiest army. And it was, or they became the superpower of that time. 1/3 of the world, near enough 1/3 of the globe was under Muslim rule. 1/3 were given sajda or given jizya. Subhanallah. Under the leadership of Abu Ubaidah, and obviously the Khalifa Amir al-Mu'minin, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu. However, let us look at Abu Ubaidah, compare that to the other army commanders. Rustum, you've heard of Rustum in Persia? He had his guards, his carpet had jewels, he had possessions, he probably had his own personal tent, all of this. While the envoy, when they came from Rome, Europe, they would come and they could not distinguish between the leader and the foot soldier. And he would say, where's your leader? And they would point towards him, and he's sitting in the middle in the gathering, dressed like the others. And he was shocked. He said, why are you like that? We've been accustomed to, royalty, and you are like this. He said, I'll be frank with you, I don't have a seat to my name. Subhanallah. But they give it fi sabilillah. They don't. You think the booty they've won, they will keep it? They were giving it, subhanallah, giving away. This was the early Sahaba in particular. And thereafter, after winning one land after another and one battle after another battle, the greatest part of Bilad al-Sham, or the holiest part of Bilad al-Sham, came under Muslim rule. What's the most holiest part of Bilad al-Sham? Masjid al-Aqsa. Subhanallah. But there's an amazing story to it. I can't relate too much because that whole incident was quite important and huge. There's a lot of lessons there. So I will, before I come to that, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, who comes to Bilad al-Sham to visit the soldiers, to visit his armies. He asks the people, where is Abu Ubaidah, my brother? And then Abu Ubaidah comes, and there is a beautiful relationship, brotherhood there. I have to mention this again. This is covered by us many times. But there is a huge incentive for those two Muslims who come together for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam beautifully said, أَيْنَ الْمُتَحَابُّونَ بِجَلَالِهِ. Where are those two who used to love one another for my sake? الْيَوْمَ أُذِلُّهُمْ فِي ذِلِّي يَوْمَ لَا ذِلَّ إِلَّا ذِلِّي. This day, meaning the day of judgment, I will shade him under the shade when there will be no other shade other than my shade. Subhanallah. So one of the intentions for us, when we come to the masajid, when we know our brother is going to be there, make it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And perhaps inshallah Allah will shade us on that day as well. He used to wear this ring, and it was enshrined on it, Khumsulillah. I forgot to mention this because he used to give everything fi sabilillah. His ring reminded him of his mission. He was a soldier in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever booty he gained, he used to give it 1/5 to Allah and his messenger subhanallah. So when Umar ibn Khattab comes and finds Abu Ubaidah and visits him, he says, come on Abu Ubaidah, let's go to your house. Let's go home. Let's go to your house. Abu Ubaidah says, you only want to shed tears for me, isn't it, Amir al-Mu'minin? So Umar ibn Khattab, the leader of the Muslims, enters the house and finds nothing. Nothing. Subhanallah. He finds small provisions of food, some rags and water skin, and the dish to eat the food with. And then he asked for the food. Umar ibn Khattab said, let me see what you're eating. And he presented that food. It was only scraps. Then he kept on crying and crying. Umar ibn Khattab kept on crying. He said, didn't I tell you will cry for me? And then he said, I told you, O commander of the believers, it is enough for you to have in the world what lets you reach the final place of rest. Then he said, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu said, غَيِّرَتْنَا الدُّنْيَا كُلَّنَا غَيْرَكَ يَا أَبَا عُبَيْدَةَ. The whole world has changed us except for you, Ya Abu Ubaidah. And this was years after the Prophet passed away. Years. So the conquest of Al-Quds, Jerusalem, they did not have to fight. And because I'm going to keep it brief, I'll still mention this. The Christians, they were persistent that the keys to the gates to enter Al-Quds, Masjid al-Aqsa and Jerusalem will only be passed on to the leader of the Muslims. So then Umar bin Khattab had to come, and then he comes only with one servant. And everyone knows the story, right? He comes with one servant riding one animal. They took turns. By the time they came in the observance of the Muslims and the people who were waiting for them, it was the servant to ride the animal, subhanallah, and he's now holding on to the reins. Can you imagine they walked on foot from Medina all the way to Masjid Al-Aqsa on foot? So his clothes must have been dirtied and perhaps with smelling with sweat and sand, and they had the animal as well with them. So that vision or that image was striking and shocking, not only for the Muslims, because the Muslims, they started saying Allahu Akbar, but the non-Muslims from the gates, behind the gates in Jerusalem, they were saying, what on earth are we seeing? Is that your leader? So Abu Ubaidah runs to him and said, yeah, I mean, perhaps you should not do that. And then he hits him in the chest and says, yeah, Abu Ubaidah, if only someone else said this other than you, you know. And then he mentions this. Umar ibn Khattab makes a very famous statement. He says, verily, we were a disgraceful people. Allah disgraced us up until Allah honored us through Islam. And if we seek honor besides Islam, which Allah honored us with, then Allah will again humble us, disgrace us, and humiliate us. So seek honor through Islam. So Al-Quds, Jerusalem, was taken peacefully. And this is what I'm going to end with regarding Jerusalem. 1400 years that land was under Muslim rule, apart from that 91 years when the Crusades went in and they slaughtered everyone, including the Christians, on their way to the Holy Land. 1400 years. There is not a single moment in that 1400-year history under Muslim rule where there was a massacre, where there was a genocide, where there was civil war. Subhanallah, how amazing is that? Yet today, what's happening there? Massacre. And it's not new, right, by the way. Massacres have been taking place in that land for decades. And we have covered some of this last Friday. A great plague, moving on to the next bit, a great plague, a disease came into that land, Bilad Sham, and it caused havoc, devastated the land, devastated the population. Many Muslims, many Sahaba passed away. And Umar ibn Khattab was near this area, and he was thinking, shall I go in, shall I not go out, shall I return? And then he was listening to the different Sahaba, and then when he decided to go back, Abu Ubaidah said some words which wasn't too pleasing to Umar ibn Khattab. Abu Ubaidah is saying to Umar ibn Khattab, are you fleeing from the decree of Allah? Then he said, he was upset. Umar ibn Khattab said, if only someone else said this, but you, Abu Ubaidah. He said, yes, I'm fleeing from the decree of Allah to the decree of Allah. Then Abdurrahman ibn Auf comes and shares a hadith, says, I've got the answer for this. And the narration, as we know, when there is a disease, you don't go there. Stay away from it. And if you're already in a town where there's a disease, you don't leave that, not to spread it. So now Umar al-Khattab returns, and he is now hearing, the plague is, going more and more into the lands where Abu Ubaidah is. So he writes a letter to Abu Ubaidah saying, I am in urgent need of you. If my letter reaches you at night, I strongly urge you to leave before dawn. If this reaches you during the day, I strongly urge you to leave before the evening and hasten to me. When Abu Ubaidah he reads the letter, he says, I know why Amir al-Mu'mineen needs me. He wants to secure the survival of someone who, however, is not eternal. So he wrote back, I know that you need me, but I am in an army of Muslims and I have no desire to save myself from what is afflicting them. Again, this is the concerning and concern for the Ummah. I do not want to separate from them until Allah wills. So when this letter reaches you, please discharge me from your command and let me stay on. So Umar who now he sheds tears while he's reading this letter of Abu Ubaidah, and the people ask him, has he passed away? Has Abu Ubaidah passed away? Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said, no, but it is near his death is near him. So Umar was not wrong, because Abu Ubaidah was afflicted with this plague. How it happened, from what I remember, a small pimple touched him, and he looked at it and said, may Allah bless it. Because one of the categories of people who are shuhada are those who are afflicted with certain diseases. And he was a mujahid. And he was in the most holiest of the lands. So can you imagine the levels of martyrdom this guy will be receiving alongside all the other companions. So now he's on his deathbed. And he is giving them, his soldiers, his final advice. He says, establish the prayer. The 5 prayers, establish it. Fast in the month of Ramadan. May Allah grant us life to meet Ramadan. Ameen. Give sadaqah. Perform Hajj and Umrah. And remain united and support one another. Be sincere to your commanders and your leaders and do not conceal anything from them. Don't let the world destroy you, don't let the world destroy you, for even if man were to live 1,000 years, he will still end up in the state you see me in. Peace be upon you and the mercy of Allah. Then he looks at Mu'adh ibn Jabal, radiyallahu anhu, another famous companion from the Ansar, and he says to him, lead the prayer. And he appointed him as the leader of the Muslims at that time, and his blessed soul departed. Thereafter, Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu, upon the death of Abu Ubaydah ibn Al Jarraah radiyallahu anhu, says, O people, you have been stricken by the death of a man. By Allah, I do not know whether I have seen a man who had a more righteous heart, who was further from all evil, and who was more sincere to the people than he. Ask Allah to shower His mercy upon him, and Allah will be merciful to you. Remember right at the beginning what did I say? عند الذكر الصالحين تنزل الرحمة. Upon the remembrance of the righteous, mercy descends. So we need to make dua and remember them. There is a Quranic dua that Allah teaches us to make dua for all the Muslims, and particularly the early Muslims, the Sahaba. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. Our Lord, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in faith. So all the Muslims who preceded us in faith, our grandparents, our families, but in particular the Sahaba. Make this intention. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And do not let our hearts have any hatred towards the Muslims, go in enmity between each other. رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Our Lord, you are most kind, most merciful. So with this I end. May Allah make this a source of reward for all of us and forgive us our shortcomings. May Allah grant Jerusalem grant it back to the Muslims. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ. Of them, some have completed their vow and died upon that. Ashuhada. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ. Amongst them are those who are still waiting for their time to come, and for their time to shine, and for their time to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. They do not change in their determination.